So I think this would be a good time for
Bill.
Bill Keller
Bill.
to
Yeah.
step
You
in,
want to
because
step in?
EnerVest has actually done more work on where the early earthquakes not captured by the local network occurred than we have published.
And I figured this might come up today, so I did bring some displays. There should be enough for, I think there's 15 copies. So. I thought it might come up today because we had discussed this before. You know, I think last fall is when we started talking about it. So the first slide is a slide that only includes the events that we have located using the local network. Okay. On the horizontal axis is time, and on the vertical axis is depth. The events are sized by the magnitude and colored by the magnitude. And so from this plot you can see that you know, the deeper events down at 20,000 feet are larger than the shallow events up near the Ellenberger interval. And because these were located using the local network, we have, you know, pretty decent depth control. It has the depth errors have been variable as SMUs move the seismic stations around over time, but for the most part, these are pretty well established to be deep events. And so,
Bill, is your depth uncertainty the same as ours? You'd think about a kilometer or so, maybe.
Yes, that's reasonable.
Okay.
And in general, the events that we've done, they are consistent with the event distribution that SMUs presented as well. So one thing that we did is we said, okay, well, we don't have local network stations for the full sequence, but what we do have is we have a very quiet, high quality station in southern Oklahoma that we can use to compare the waveform shapes of the well-recorded events to the initial sequence of events, and so we did that. So if you go to the next slide, it's just a map, and it the black triangles are showing this the ones in the southern end of the map. Those are the SMU deployed local network stations, and then there's a station WMOK that's up near Lawton, up in Oklahoma. So this is the station that we were using to compare the waveforms. And what we've seen in this sequence and also in the past is that because of the high signal noise on that station, it's very sensitive to discriminating between waveform shapes, even when events are very close together. Within a mile, sometimes you can see variability within the waveforms. And because, as presented in the SMU paper, the shallow events seem to have a different sense of slip than the deep events, that causes a different waveform shape that's characteristic that we can identify. So if you go to the next slide, what we've done is we pulled one of the on the bottom. Okay, let me step back. So this is this WMOK station. The wiggly lines are ground velocity recorded at that station. And in this display, the vertical axis is the amplitude of that ground velocity, and the horizontal axis is time. And so we're looking at one component of the recording compared for 3 different events. The black event, which is the one at the bottom, that was a magnitude 3.1 that occurred on December 22nd, 2013, down at greater than 20,000 feet depth by our estimation, which is consistent with what SMU has shown as well. That was a well-recorded event on the local network. We know it's deep. The middle waveform is shown in red. That is from December 8th, one of the largest events in the sequence, a magnitude 3.6, prior to when the local network was installed. And then the blue event up at the top, that was recorded on January 28th, 2014, magnitude 2.4, Our depth is 12,000 feet, so it's one of these shallow events up on the antithetic fault. So right away you can see that the waveform between the red event and the black event are quite similar, and that the blue one looks quite different. If you go to the next slide, I've basically set up the slide where I've repeated the black event, the well-recorded deep event, in each of the displays, so you can really, see the waveform shape overlaid for the shallow event and for the magnitude 3.6 that was reported prior to the local network. And so to us, this means that, because the waveform shapes are very similar, this is pretty strong evidence that the larger events and the events that were recorded prior to the local network were also deep.
How far back in time did you go?
We went back with the cross correlation?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we went back all the way, it was several years prior to the
What do you think?
events.
What do you think your magnitude threshold was for?
We think that we've got a complete catalog down to about magnitude 1.5. We obviously detected some events down to magnitude 1/2, but we feel pretty confident we're complete above 1.5, which I think is consistent with what you guys have generally seen as well.
We need more stations like WMOK.
WMLK is great. I have a question.
Sure.
Now, yeah, I had seen this before. So, are you going to be able to write it up and publish it?
Well, we haven't really
It'd be great.
discussed that in detail, but
You should do it. You should do it.